Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 8 of Modeling from the Ensign's Chair Refit Smoothie build. When I did the update last week, I was working on the wiring for the saucer section and trying to finish up that and finalize everything on it. And so I'm about ready to seal the saucer up, and I just wanted to make sure that I went back and reviewed what I did with the saucer, if anybody wants to use anything that I've done on it. And also go over just a couple tips if you haven't done anything with LED lighting or that before, the wiring. So just a couple things I want to go over, and we'll get the saucer section sealed up, and then hopefully when we come back next week we'll start working on another section. But put you on the table, we'll get to work. Alright, so here's where we're at. I've basically got this together. I've got it taped shut right now just to do kind of a check on the lighting and everything, make sure everything's working properly. I've got my antenna control board set up temporarily. We'll go ahead and turn that on, and we'll let that deflector crystal power up on it, and you can see that come on. But I've got to go back. I made a little bit of a boo-boo here when I was doing my final light blocking back here on the impulse crystal deck. I got a little bit of overspray on the back here and a little bit right up front here where my Rayathon lighting is, and making a mistake that I shouldn't have made, because I've done this before. Instead of sanding off that little bit of overspray and making sure that was clear before I just went and painted over it with primer, and unfortunately you can tell a little bit of splotching right here where this turn this off, we can see it. A little bit of splotching on this back section here, and just one or two little spots up here where it got up here on the front. So I'm going to have to go back and fix that. I've got the dome temporarily in place, and you can see that strobe light flashing there. I'm going to try to pick this up, but I don't have the wiring completely, but you can see that officer's lounge is lit up. Can't really see any of the detail on there. I didn't do a whole lot of detail on that because I know once I put the microcrystal clear in there, you're probably not going to be able to make out but so much of it. But I do have that lighting there, and again, we've got that lighting back here for the registry when it goes on, and we've also got our rec deck there, which again, wasn't too worried about getting too detailed on that, because once I put microcrystal clear in those windows, you're probably not going to be able to make out but so much of it. So I've got a little bit of blue lighting in there just to give it some kind of effect in there. So but we've got that, and we've got all of our other windows are lit up nice, and you can see that antenna controls lighting. Oops, lost my power cord there. All the antenna controls lighting is working properly for the saucer section. I do have some more touching up I've got to do on the inside there, and once we do that, we'll be ready to start doing some Aztecing on it. Again, I'm not going to go too much into the Aztecing detail. There's several great videos out there on doing the Aztec on these, so pretty much when I go to do it, I'm just going to do it and come back. And I've lost my deflector crystal there, but so I just wanted to go over and show you, how I've got everything set up. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this tape off and open the saucer section up so I can show you what I did. It's not the only way. There's several different ways to do this, but it's the way that I did it. And give me a minute, we'll come back and we'll take a look at that. Alright guys, welcome back. So I've got the tape taken off, and I just want to open this up and show you and just go over a couple things in here real briefly. But you can see how I've got my LED strips laid out. And for those that haven't used LED lighting before, maybe you're just starting on it, there's a couple of simple things just to keep in mind. One is the strips themselves. If you just want to, the first model I did with lighting, I just used LED strips. And you can do some decent lighting with it. When you get into some of the tighter spots, you may not be able to use these. But that's what I did for my first LED model, just to kind of break me into getting it lit up. Was I just used the LED strip tape. You can typically cut these down into 2-inch strips, like these are. And you can either use the wiring like I've got here, I've used this wiring from super bright LEDs, and it's worked out pretty well. And when that won't work, if I get into like a tight spot, for instance on this one, I go to do the wiring from the nacelles down to the secondary hull, I may have to use magnet wire. And I don't have my magnet wire out here right now, but magnet wire is useful for tight spots like that. But for the most part, I try to use, I think I mentioned in my first video for this what the gauge was on this. I don't recall off the top of my head, but it's worked out pretty well. Everything's lit up. Your best friend you can have when you're doing this lighting is get yourself a glue gun, a hot glue gun. I mean, they're only about 10 bucks, and you'll get a lot of use out of it, I can promise you that. This is a Sure Bonder that I got, I'm not sure if I got that from Walmart or what, but you can usually get it at your local Walmart or something similar. It doesn't have to be that one. But I use that a lot. You can see where I did my connections on the LED strip tapes. Where I soldered that, I actually went ahead and covered it with a little bit of hot glue. That way it gives it just a little more support to hold it in place. You don't want the weld, or not the weld, but the where you're connecting these at. You don't want it to come apart. You don't want that solder to break eventually. And then, especially like these, if I lose a break, if it breaks anywhere in here, I'm going to lose all these lights because I do them, one continuous run. So I just put a little bit of hot glue on the end of each one where the connections are, just to kind of help hold it in place. Another thing that the hot glue gun's good for using for is when you run your wiring, once you get everything laid out, I keep bumping it. Once you get everything laid out and you get your wiring set up, you want to make sure that you hot glue your wire in place so it's not going to slide around or move and then end up coming across, especially if you're doing Rayathon. You don't want that wire to run out of place, and now you've got a wire that's showing through after you've sealed this saucer up. You've got a wire that's backlit that's running across your spotlight, and now you've got this black mark there where that wire is showing through. So you want to make sure that you hot glue all your wires in place so that they're not going to interfere with your Rayathon, or even if you're not doing Rayathon, your windows that you have. You've got plenty of windows in here that you don't want that wire to block, and then you're not going to get light through it. So, use that hot glue gun. You can see I've hot glued all my connections except right here at the very back where everything's going to run down through the neck into the secondary hull. I've got my rec deck in place over here. Didn't do a whole lot of detail to it, just added a couple different colors. I've got this light here that's backlight, and I put a little bit of blue, clear blue on that back part to just kind of give it some color in here, so when you look through the windows of the observation deck, you get some variance in colors, and that's about all you're going to make out. By the time I put microcrystal clear in these windows, you're probably not going to be able to make out so much, but it'll give it a little bit of depth and a little bit of character to it. Other than that, the other thing I want to mention too is if you do the fiber optics like I talked about and you connect it to a light bulb, where you run it through your hull at, you want to make sure that first of all do some hot glue on it to hold it in place, like I did. Then you want to come back after that hot glue sets and you make sure everything's working properly. Come back with some black paint and black that out, because if you don't black out around where you hot glued at, any of these internal lights are going to seep through that hot glue because it's transparent, and it's going to cause that fiber optic to stay lit white, and it'll still work. You'll still get the flashing color, but in between it'll stay lit white. Now, if you want it that way, that's one way to do that, but I don't want it like that. So I've come back and I've blacked out where that hot glue is with black paint to make sure that the light doesn't keep that fiber optic lit up. And the only other thing I'll say is, if you haven't had a lot of experience with LEDs, I've done this one here to kind of help illuminate. See if I can put this back on here. Just to kind of help provide a little bit of light. I don't know if you can make that out, but provide a little bit of light here where that spotlight's going to shine out. I got a couple things to work out with that. For one, this is a really bright white light, but then when it's shining on the hull, it's kind of a yellowish light. And And I think it's because of the age of the kit that this is kind of yellowed a little bit. So I'm going to have to figure something out with that to kind of help get these match up a little more. Because to me it just doesn't look right with that really bright white light. I mean, this is kind of yellowish, but you know, it could be a contrast with the hull too. By the time I paint the Aztecs on here, it may pan out, so we'll see. But on these LEDs though, if you haven't done a lot with these LEDs, you know, practice with them. There's a lot of online videos you can watch to learn how to do these, and you don't have to have, you know, the best soldering skills. You know, practice your soldering and all that on them, but just get you get these little cheap kits. I see these advertised all the time that come with your LEDs and resistors, and comes with your 3 and 5 millimeter LEDs. But you just you look around online, you'll see these are advertised. These placebos all the time are advertised on there. The only thing I'll say about the resistor kit, it's not the greatest selection of resistors. They've got a lot of really high rated resistors that you may not use on these. So I've gone, and I don't remember where I got this at, but I found this online too. It's just a big pack of different rated resistors, and I think this was like $8–10 bucks. It wasn't that much for all these resistors, and so far I haven't had any problems with them failing or, you know, not working right. So you know, do that. Get one of those kits and just practice, you know, your resistors, your lights. There's an LED calculator, resistor calculator that you can find. There's several of them online. Just do a search for it. They'll help you figure out what type of resistor to use with your LED light bulbs. So that'll help you out there. Other than that, this thing is shaping up pretty good. Like I said, I've got a few more things to do. I'm going to seal this up, and I'm trying to decide if I want to go ahead and do the Aztecs before I move on to anything else. I usually like to do my builds in complete sections and then put them together. But with the video series, I don't want to keep y'all waiting too long to get on to something else in case you're following along or looking for some tips or that. But the only other thing I had was I talked about lighting up these phaser banks, and what I've come up with is I've got a 5 millimeter bulb. You can see the resistor on there, and what I've done is I've taken what does this say, 1/32 drill bit, and put it on my pin vise, and all I did was I went in and I drilled, not very deep, just enough to get these to stick in there. This is my 0.03 inch end glow fiber optic. So what I'll do is I've drilled a little bit of a hole, just not very deep, definitely not far enough to where I'm going to hit that resistor or the LED bulb itself. But I drilled it in there. I stuck these down in each of those holes, and then I took some of my Gorilla Glue and put that on there sparingly, and it's got it held in place now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick each of these through this, where I've drilled out these holes on the front here. I haven't taped those up yet, so I don't want to, but you see what I'm talking about. If I can show you with this, if you don't black out where that fiber optic comes out of the hull, if I get this, get this light back on. Back in. Come on, plug. Alright. But you can kind of see, hopefully, where that lighting is showing through those phaser banks there. So that's why you want to make sure that you black out the inside where that fiber optic penetrates the hull, because otherwise you're going to have a problem with that light shining through. But basically what I'm looking to do here is I've got a red bulb attached to this, and what I'm going to do is light this up. And you see that light is shining through so much you can't even tell that it's a red bulb. So it's interfering with it. But anyway, what I've got is I've got this to where you'll get that red light through the phaser. And I was looking at contemplating whether or not to do all the phaser banks. And to be honest with you, I think it's just going to be so time consuming. I think I'm just going to do the forward facing phaser banks just for a demonstration. And probably just hook it to a switch, but you can see that light there. And once I get that sealed up and in the hull, you'll be able to see it better. But that's what I'm working on for that. Like I said, I'm just going to do the forward-facing phaser banks because it's just going to be way more time-consuming than I care to put the time into. Maybe when I go back and do I'm going to do another 1350 Enterprise refit at some point, and maybe when I go back to do that, I'll do all of them like this and work on getting a programming board or something going with it. But so that's pretty much what I've got for right now. I'm gonna work on getting this finalized and sealed up, and then, like I said, I'm not sure next episode when I come back. And actually, next week I will not have an episode. I will be in New Mexico with the wife. So hopefully, when I come back though for the next episode, we'll have this done, and we'll start hopefully moving on to the neck, and the neck ain't gonna take that long. I've pretty much got that all painted, so I just got to put my LED strip lights in here and light it up the way I want to, and get those wires fed through there, and do my photons, get that set up. So that won't take long, and then we'll be on to the secondary hull. But until I see you next time, keep modeling.